Hi, my name is Lauren Kruger-Patchen. Today we're selecting topics from our digital journalism readings. I'll be talking about media convergence. What is media convergence? Partnerships between different media outlets like television, print news, radio. It can mean changes in the newsroom, organizational structures, usually concerning management, expectations that journalists will use multimedia formats and that journalists will create new forms of storytelling. How does this relate to digital journalism? The rise of technology in the digital age of journalism has encouraged some media outlets to consider convergence. Some have tried and failed, some have tried and succeeded in ways, and some have not experimented with convergence yet. All media outlets have been and still are undergoing changes because of the evolution of news on the web. Getting news on the web can be very competitive between newspapers, radio, TV broadcasters. So how does convergence work? All these media outlets that have been competitors suddenly want to work together. And it has to do with better quality journalism, wider coverage, and reducing production costs. In my last presentation, I researched how newspapers specifically have been affected by the internet. Now I'll build off that information to explain how all media outlets have been affected by the internet. The result of this web-first publishing seems to be creating the idea of media convergence in order to produce more news faster with a wider amount of coverage and all of the multimedia aspects. Why do we care about convergence now? It has been argued that media convergence is a good and a bad idea. Media outlets have toyed around with the idea, but it has not become a big, successful trend yet. Based on my research, this is because news outlets, especially print, do not know how to participate in the media convergence successfully. Some people have tried this, but there hasn't been a set way to succeed with convergence. I have been searching for the answer. How do media outlets participate in convergence and create that successful outcome? And how can they be an example for other media outlets? If and when convergence is successful, how will this change digital journalism? My research begins to answer these questions. The Communication Forum video research explains that there is a need for multimedia which combines the aspects of newspaper, film, and digital video for online journalism content. I found this information pertinent to my research because it explains why convergence between newspapers and television stations could be beneficial. They could work together to create multimedia content, which require print and broadcast skill sets. If both media outlets converge and work together, they'll have professionals handling the aspect of that multimedia that they're best at, creating better quality journalism. In the Newsroom Integration, we see examples of different countries' media outlets that have experimented with convergence. These case studies evaluate how newsrooms distribute workflow between the platforms and what the need of multi-skilling is. They conclude that convergence is ideal, but difficult to accomplish. This is helpful to my research because it gives specific examples of convergence attempts and where they did and didn't work. Success came when the media outlets had similar goals for working together, but the ownership and partnering can be tricky to establish. The source, Media Organizations and Convergence, gives background information. Convergence evolved in the 1960s when the U.S. Department of Defense began to work with researchers and universities to develop the internet. The concept of convergence took off in the 2000s when AOL and Time Warner, an internet and cable company, converged into a new company together. Ultimately, this convergence failed, but that's where it all began. So where does this leave us? My research shows that studies on convergence do exist, but there have been many failed attempts. There is little information on how print media outlets can be successful with convergence. We see convergence evolve over the years as technology and the web become a bigger part in news coverage. We see the idea of convergence being tested internationally, but we never see a model that others can use to converge successfully. Based on my research, I have concluded that while some organizations have experienced failed attempts at convergence and others are still attempting convergence, it is not something that media outlets should give up on entirely. If we continue to recognize why organizations have been unsuccessful with convergence and note what did and didn't work, I believe eventually there will be success and a set example for all other media outlets, especially print. This will create a completely new standard for digital journalism.